Ready? Okay. I will call to order Tuesday, February 11th, for the City Council. I need the approval of the agenda.
So moved?
Seconded, all in favor?
Yes.
Okay. At our recent City Council retreat, we've decided that we are going to extend our public comment phase for both the regular meetings and the work sessions. So those folks who, if you're here and you would like to make a comment on any topic, you're welcome to. If not, we'll move on. It is a long agenda, so thank you. Okay. Just let everybody know that we will be doing that from now on, at least until the next retreat, and we decide something else. First item. Michael is here to talk to us about the tobacco retail licensing.
Can you fill this out? Okay. Good evening, councilors. This is Mike McNichol, Clatsop County Public Health. Thanks again for allowing me to come here. So we've talked before about tobacco retail licensing. This will be the fourth time I've come in front of you to talk about it. In case you didn't know, the county actually adopted the ordinance about a month ago. And so we're coming to all the cities looking for support and either a resolution or whatever. You don't actually have to adopt the ordinance, it turns out. You just have to have support of it so we can actually move forward with the licensing of the retailers. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have about it, because I did send it to you guys in advance of my being here. But again, the purpose of the tobacco retail licensing is to make sure that we enforce Tobacco 21, which is the state law, and now federal law, that you can't sell tobacco products to anyone under the age of 21. However, at the state and federal level, there is no funding in order to enforce those things, so no one was really going to do it, so they pushed it down to the counties, thankfully. And so we took the initiative to build the tobacco retail licensing ordinance in order to do that. So it is a two-step process. We would have education first, meet with all the retailers, go over everything in what the state law represents, all the things they're looking for in the ordinance, and then we would do surprise inspections to make sure they're following Tobacco 21 rules and not selling and those kind of things. So we think it's a great policy right now for Clatsop County. And really, if you look at some of the statistics, the statewide average numbers, the percentage of smokers is 18%, and Clatsop County is 24%. So we do have some work to do on trying to make that number go down. And so we feel that this policy, the level will at least make it more difficult, much more difficult for anybody under 21 to at least get those products. So that's why we're trying to do this.
Excellent. Bruce, do you think we could do like a really short proclamation for the next meeting and just show our support that way?
Oh, I was thinking we do a resolution.
Want to do it as a resolution?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it's got a little more meat behind it.
Okay, perfect. We'll have that at our next.
Is it possible to send us a sample resolution, or are you just asking the cities to come up with something on their own?
I mean, we could do the whereases if you wish. We could certainly come up with one. That'd be okay with me. We could send it to you.
The only reason I ask
Yeah.
is just I'd like to do something that's in conjunction with what you're
Okay.
presenting.
Sure, I'd be more happy to get that to you.
Good suggestion, Frank. So if you would send us the whereas that we've covered.
Absolutely.
And, we can do it at March 13th.
When do you need it? So when would you need it by?
21st.
21st?
Oh.
February, okay. Sure, no problem. We can get that done
We'll plan on it
for March 3rd. Okay, great.
I have a question on it.
Sure.
That is the nature of support. The council, I can't imagine they wouldn't vote to support it. I'm not sure what support for the ordinance really means.
So it's basically, it allows us to, without your support in the city, we wouldn't be able to actually conduct our licensing or make people pay fees to the licensing so they can become those retailers in your jurisdiction, which are, I'm not even sure how many there are, to pay those fees and for us to allow them to do inspections. It would be a lot, it's giving us the ability to do that by having your permission.
So it's more or less an endorsement of the.
Correct,
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mike.
Anything else? Okay. Sure.
Sorry, so in regard to the statistics that you mentioned about the number of smokers, is there something that you recommend to the city in order to try and lower that?
Yeah, we'd be, well, I have my health promotion team here, actually, Jill, Julia, and Catherine. And we could actually develop some ideas and some program plans if you wish to, some of the best practices we've seen in other places that have done that, if you wish to do that as a city. That's beyond the TR, the tobacco retail licensing, but there are some best practices we'd certainly be able to give to you to try to help do
I
that.
can't speak for the entire
Sure.
council, of course, but just myself, I would at least be interested in hearing, what's been tried in other communities.
Sure.
And is successful.
We'd be able to put some of that for you together if you wish.
I would,
Great.
Yep,
Anybody else?
right.
sounds good.
So maybe another work session where we could roll that out and you can talk about policy, things that you want to do beyond what we're doing. We'd be happy to help you do it.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure, my pleasure.
Well, and I know Parks has been working on some
That's what I was thinking.
things that direction.
Yeah, that's a big one, is trying to make tobacco-free, not just smoke-free. That's a big one. And now vapor-free, that'd be great. And now with marijuana available, trying to make it marijuana-free. So there's lots of free going on. So it'd be good to have lots of free. So we could certainly help you with that, so.
Okay,
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
you bet.
We'll see you then.
Okay, our next item, 12 Days of Earth Resolution and Handbook. Bruce. Karen.
January 14th work session, you guys were given a proposed process for being able to move forward in making the 12 Days of Earth a city event. And the Parks and Community Services Committee has played an integral role every year in putting on this event. And staff and city attorney has drafted the necessary documents to make it an official city event. And what you have in your packet is the final draft of that. So for tonight, it's for your consideration to approve it as drafted and or make modifications based on what you see there.
Okay. Anybody else have comments? I've got a couple, but
Okay, sure.
I'll start. First one is page 1 of 4. Page 4, it says street fair liaison will recommend community partner invitees based on the following criteria, and the first one is content of their booths. And I know you've kind of mentioned this isn't a means to work around the content issue, but is that an issue that we should be more concerned about here?
I think, go ahead.
It wasn't in order to work around the regulations. It was more of a recognition that the Parks and Community Services is doing 12 days or something like that, to try to benefit 501c3s that might be able to come. They're more likely to come if they can either take donations or sell merchandise that would allow them to, sell it. That was the initial request. It was carried to the planning commission. I believe the planning commission has some further thoughts on it and expanded it beyond just like the city-sponsored events, with the idea that it would help 501c3s. We've not given that the whole review as far as what the possible implications.
I guess what I'm worried about is that phrase, content of their booths. Kind of, if somebody doesn't like macrame and says, I don't want the macrame in the booth.
No, the idea is
Yeah.
that each booth participant would have things that support the 12 days mission. And so things that wouldn't necessarily tie into that, they would invite based on things that are supporting the mission of the 12 days is what this is really getting at.
That needs to say that a little better.
Okay.
Right now, just content of their booth. Seems kind of, a little concerning to me.
Yeah.
It says that somewhere else in this, and that language was good, but maybe I can't find it right now.
And my,
That it
Down at where it says booths on that same page, at the second bullet point, it says booths shall support the mission and goals of the 12 Days of Earth event.
I mean, the idea of having it as a city event, they can make invites that support what the goal is here, and you don't have kind of battle of the missions, if you will, in an event that's not a city event. Anybody can come, it's a kind of a free speech type of a deal.
Right.
With us, it's the mission for what 12 days is all about. They make an invite to people that have something that supports and upholds that mission, and I think that's what the wording is getting out there.
I'm in complete support of that, and I agree with Sam about at the top,
Yeah, it sounds like
just where it
that's good.
says content.
So reword the one that at the top.
Yeah, just be
Okay, I'll work
consistent.
with Ashley on that.
Okay?
Anything else?
Just to make sure, the only people that we're going to be inviting to the qualifying of this would be 501c3s.
I understand that. But I'm trying to think of somebody 10 years from now reading that, going, oh, content of the booth, I have to be a content Nazi, kind of thing. And just the terminology was a little too loose there. So firm it up and find something. The other item I had, and this was just a question about this being the mission goals and management. There's no section on marketing and promotion plan. And my thought was, if this was an event that was going to go through and get a TAC money, you would have to have that in the application, some sort of marketing and promotion plan. There's nothing in here that states that. So how are the community, since it is the whole thing is to educate the community, if the community doesn't know about it? So.
I think that the intent is that it is not something that would go through TAC.
I understand that, but it's a city issue, and so how would you, I don't feel comfortable with saying, we're asking everybody else to do this kind of presentation, why can't we? So, and it's not like I'm saying we need an advertising plan. It's just, there should be some sort of comment in here about getting the message out so that the community hears about what's going on. Because this is the management plan. Okay? Those are the only two comments I had.
One thing I was just wanting to ask about, usually we provide the tables and that sort of thing in the past, and there's been some continuity. I can see we've had up to 20-some different people. If everyone has to bring their own table and has to bring it to the spot, it could be very chaotic. And so I'm wondering why we can't still do that so there's uniformity in the spaces.
And your point's well taken. I think they were kind of thinking the reverse of that is because the potential is that this would grow. The city may not be able to provide the tables because there would be more participants than what we could provide.
But then you'd even have more vehicles trying to get their tables to the spot. You know what I'm saying?
I think the city would be in a position where we have to go rent tables or something to provide for this event. So we're kind of leaving it like the farmer's market where each booth participant brings what they need to supply their booth. But I think that if someone couldn't do that for some reason, we could be some sort of a support for that. But I think if this grows to the level that they're hoping, the city wouldn't have enough tables to provide for everybody that might participate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now,
Interesting.
I mean, if you guys have different thoughts on that, or you want us to be in a position, if we get to that point, we go rent tables, it just kind of opens up a
Well, I just
situation.
think in most convention centers, when I did that sort of thing,
Yeah,
it was provided to us and there was a fee, but,
yeah. Anywhere
It
where
was
they do
minimal.
events, definitely.
and it always looks
Yeah.
a lot better. Because I can see it being quite diverse.
Up to you. I mean,
We
other
have
city
about
events that would open us
5
up
or
to
6
do that.
tents and more tables.
A lot of times there weren't tents.
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I think they were all tables, weren't they before? Yeah,
That's because we didn't, and the ordinance that wouldn't allow canopies.
right.
Some had them anyway. Like
We
it was in the,
had
it was in the
the
bank
last-
parking lot.
Last one, the way it was written, it didn't say close the street, it was for something else, so, we did have the canopy, not everybody, the canopies were allowed.
It's been known to rain.
It's gonna look more like a fair or, I don't know, a garage sale. I don't know. If you don't have uniformity in the spaces and how it looks, it just worries me that it's kind of going, okay, everybody, you do your own thing and we'll just see how it
I think
falls.
while it's small, we've done that, we could probably continue, but if it does morph into something bigger and we've committed to that in this document, it just sets us up for having to go rent tables somewhere.
There's something
Because
to
we
be,
wouldn't have 'em.
something to be said about it looking more like a fair
Yeah.
with each one with their own unique character and look.
Where are you thinking this will be?
What do you mean?
The last place we had was on Second.
It's on the
Right, I
street.
know, so,
Yeah,
Well, and it does,
and most of them can get tables.
it does say that you have to bring, it says what to bring, a canopy. So it looks like if you have to bring, I don't know if you have to bring a canopy, I'm not sure that's exactly what it says, but it says what to bring, a canopy. So at least the canopies would all be similar. The tables underneath them might not be, but the canopies would be similar. So it has some kind of
I don't
a look.
think canopies are required, but I think that they do address the use of a canopy in here.
And the size is
Right.
required, 10 by
Right.
10.
And again, I think that will come up for further discussion when we get into that events thing. Some of that, this may be regrouped associated with being in line with the events policy. But right now, based on our current events wording, this works with it.
And I think that it probably would be possible for us to scrounge enough tables for something like this, but we wouldn't be able to provide uniformity in canopies. We don't have enough of that. So-
yeah, I was just thinking the tables, I think Kirk always brings them and the chairs, and they're just ready for everybody set up and ready to go. What if not everybody's on time? Anyway, I just thought it would look nicer and,
Like I say, when it's, if it stays small like this, I don't think it's going to be a problem. It's looking to the future, hoping that this thing becomes a more substantial celebration and event, and then that would present a challenge.
Well, you'll certainly know ahead of time how many people are coming and be able to talk to them,
yeah,
ask
because they
them.
like to advertise
Sure.
who's coming.
Yeah. As they make the invite, they may be able to ask them if they're able to provide their own tables and if they need our support in that arena.
So I think the chamber provided, is that right? No, they can't, Barb.
But they would.
We asked, right?
Nice.
From the past, we have supplied. My suggestion then is that, and following along with what Councilor Liz was saying and what Karen's saying, because we're so small enough, that why don't we make this soft enough that this year we'll do the tables, and we'll just kind of take it year by year to see how it works. Because really, last year was, I guess it had been done on second floor, but then it had been done in the parking lot. So really, we've only got 1 year experience, at least recently. And so let's, we'll work with that. Some of us will help with the table comments. So we can let's just soften it, but with the idea that if it's out of hand, then we make changes.
I have a question. On page 4, booths, general rules of booth operations, it says selling of goods and services shall follow the current municipal code. I know we've had prior discussion about the selling of goods, and I know they're nonprofits, but is this opening us up to discussion about outside sales code?
I'll probably speak to that in other, but it's, currently, I believe, looking language within the ordinance, that if you go through the city manager and your nonprofit and site specific sales,
so that, as I understand it from the previous code, previous practices, that is somewhat different than what we have practiced in the past. Is that right?
Yeah, well, like I said, even though there is, and I'll point it out in my presentation, there's the language that I believe conflicts distinctly with that, just within that same section. But you can, I believe, interpret the code to say for special events, if you go through the city manager, you can get a site permit for that.
That's 501c3 zone.
Only 501c3. It's only for sale. You can't give balance.
And do we have a definition of what kinds of goods can be sold?
I don't believe in that section of that word that.
As I understand it, the previous code said only living plants. Well, that was before farmer's market. Yeah. There's quite the history with the farmer's market, which we won't get into now, but everybody else knows about it.
Well, then, didn't it?
Yeah. But it was living plants or newspapers.
Yeah, because there's parts of that in it.
Yeah. The farmer's market ordinance was kind of done specifically for the farmer's market.
Other sections, comments?
Any other questions on the 12 Days of Earth?
No,
12?
thank you very much.
Welcome. We'll make those changes and bring it back to you in the next work session.
Okay.
Wait, work session
Yeah, we will modify this and let's bring it to March 3rd.
for a vote?
Yes. Yeah, I think these
These
changes.
are minor changes, so.
Yeah.
That, cool.
We don't want you moving.
No, I'm not.
Okay, then. I got that good. And we're going to our next item, which is special events ordinance. Jeff is warming us up, and
Yes, and I'm going to bring this up, but our planning commission said that these first row of lights, the work that it goes off.
yeah, I get glare.
I wanted to give you double green road works. So be prepared for more PowerPoint presentation. And be warning to all. When we have a staff meeting, it's Jeff's turn to talk. We ask him if he has a PowerPoint.
That means we need more coffee.
So this special events ordinance has a history that goes back to a question that was brought forward when I first started here back in 2018, late in the year, and it involved food trucks. And that's really where this kind of brought the question up. And people started saying, planning commission recommended that we open that and have community involvement, and so we'll talk about that. Then you'll see there the different sections we'll be looking at, programming fees and all that. And then that final, after that special events committee, is it signs off by the city manager. And they'll have it permit, and then there's, of course, all those things about relocation, violations, and stuff like that, appeals. So, if you like, we can walk through kind of the different sections of the ordinance, or I can take questions prior, whichever way you want to go, but I'm happy to just kind of walk through the major points, and then you can take questions if you want to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Oh,
Walk through it, or?
to walk through it.
Okay. I've got probably the most questions for everybody, but we can do this point by point, so walking through it works.
I'll just kind of briefly go through the major sections and kind of some of the highlights that were brought up in the plan. Okay, so if you turn to the third page there where the definitions really start, I'd like to say the major ones, of course, are the event, and like I just explained, it includes a special event or a demonstration. So you go up above and that gives you the definition of what a demonstration is. And, that's some protected rights and protected practices, and that's why demonstrations are kind of unique. Then you'll go down to the, I really would turn to the next page, because that tells you what special event means. And that special event means 4 different things, and then it refers you back to the minor and major, which is on the pages prior to that. And like I said, really what separates that major is the closing of the street, some traffic control plan, or 200 individuals. One of the key points I do want to point out there on page 3 is that private property survey. Okay, so if it's a gathering of over 50 people, it's an administrative minor event permit is issued by the community development director. So that's an administrative process that we go through on approval. Okay,
Shall we do questions by item, or do you want to wait until the end?
why don't I just go through it and then we
Okay.
can come back and go section by section, okay? So then we get into what, you need a permit to do this. Page 5 talks about those exceptions that I brought up. Funeral processions was one the planning commission kind of went back and forth on. We really needed that, and if that's something we do, I don't know, I don't have the history with that here. I do know in other communities, yes, that is something that is an exception in other communities. But anyhow, they decided to Then signage, like I said, we're affecting the signage in section 3, page 19. And I've defined the temporary signage, means a sign such as a banner not permanently attached to the building, structure of the ground, and posted for no longer than 72 hours without a special event permit. So we have currently, like it says, temporary sign, there is no duration on what a temporary sign is. So, I think it's just very loose language the way that it is now. Window signs, change that a little bit as well. And then you've got the zoning. So what we put for the zoning, drive-in restaurant or formal food restaurant or mobile food vendor, except those operating under the terms of a special event permit. So they're under 1722 So they would still be prohibited uses unless they had a special use permit. And then outdoor merchandising, like I said, the main thing there, we moved a lot of this language into the special event ordinance, or we changed that, like we put the very last line on page 23F, for the purpose of this section, the free distribution of merchandise on public property or in the right of way with a special event permit is not considered outdoor merchandise. So this allows somebody to still distribute things without. We tried to reverse the local language to allow. So that's how it shook out. Any thoughts, or want me to kind of, I'll take notes or answer questions.
Okay. I have a lot, so what I'll do is we'll go through it section by section, so everybody can chime in on one section if they have points. I'm going to start with definitions. I've got two here that,
Can you just please say the page number, Sam?
this will be page 2.
Great.
And a first note, Jeff, when I got the copy from what the Planning Commission had, their draft, it references by number of line. Those are really cool. And I think that would make for future, for us, when we're doing this.
I do that with all my
Okay, when we have drafts, let's do that for us too, because it makes it really quick and easy for referencing. So in this case, page 3. The term demonstration, to me, means something different. And I would like to consider that being more like an assembly rather than a demonstration. Demonstration has kind of a forceful negative term to it, and it kind of means picketing and signs and demonstration. Whereas something like a gathering or an assembly would be a better term for me. Same situation with the event promoter. I'd rather it say something like event contact person rather than the promoter, or a coordinator would be better. And that's all I have for
I think sponsor might even be better for that, event sponsor.
sponsor. Means the folks who are sponsoring the event. Coordinator means the person you contact when you have a problem.
The individual.
Yeah, and I would think, from what I read in the application part, the event promoter was the person who signed the stuff. Promoter, again, a negative term for me.
Sam, another question on, when you're looking at the definition of demonstration,
Huh?
how would you treat the situation when there was somebody coming to publicly oppose a situation or whatever? I want to be careful not to, if such a thing is possible, then I think that we need to address it in here so we know what to do.
And I would define demonstration as what what that would be. Whereas in this case, it means any formation, procession, or assembly. So that means a parade becomes a demonstration? No. I would rather it be an assembly. The 2 points below it both say assembly and gather.
What I could do, Sam, is I'll look and see other registrations, maybe bring that,
Yeah.
you guys have time to take it.
Then we can define demonstration for what it is. Okay? Permit required is the next section.
Page
This will be
4?
Page 4, 0401030, permit required. This one, I have a big problem with, because there's kind of a catch-22 going on here. If all events conducted in city parks shall also comply with chapter park code, our current iteration of the park code says any event of 50 or more must go through the special events code. So you're just going to go back and forth, and it causes to me a problem on staff of defining which is the one that's going to be followed. So that's just a big concern to me, and I don't know how to. We have to fix one or the other. Okay. Anybody else?
If you're going to make a distinction between major and minor events, you address that.
And did we talk about private property in this particular section? Or is that somewhere else?
That's somewhere else, I think.
So, yeah, so, private property is not, so the private public kind of differentiation is not made kind of in the minor, major, or any of that level, right? So you could have, the event could be on public or private, but if it's a private, on private property, you can come in and get that, through administrative process for that private event.
Say you're having a wedding at your house and you might have 50 guests or more. Do you have to go out and get a permit if it's at a residence? I'm thinking Haystack Gardens is a private property, so I understand that. But if it's a private residence would also have to get a permit?
If you're expecting over 50 people,
And what's the fee for that?
we did say, that's the whole thing, planning commission, I've never worked in a jurisdiction that allows the planning commission to set a fee or even think about fee. That's up to you guys.
If I can follow up on Nancy's question, I think that if an event was to be held at somebody's house, something like that, there's probably a couple things we would have. One is noise, whether you have a band amplified, that kind of thing, or you just say you can't or something. And then the other is that if you have a very tight parking situation, then we're going to probably put some restrictions or some requirements on them to provide parking in another location or something so that you don't overwhelm your neighbors. So, I mean, we're not going to say that, you can't serve wine signs or anything like that. But it's primarily how it's going to impact.
Yeah. A part state, if you read that private property permit, if this does not impact the public, it's under, if it's 50 over 50, you're not impacting any bar, you don't take trash or anything like that, it says, the last thing it says,
Which page are you on?
oh, sorry, page 2. It says, fiscal use of such project will impede the normal or usual traffic regulation control or require the provision of extraordinary city service is not governed by this chapter. So all I'm doing is reviewing it. If you don't have those main issues, you don't expect to have those issues, then I can sign off on that from the But what that does is it guarantees
you going to let people know, I mean, how are you going to let residents know that they're going to have to get a permit?
You know, it's pretty much what we have to do with everything. We have to have some kind of campaign or some brochure or some kind of notice out there, or new ordinances just to put.
Actually, Nancy kind of brought this up to me, and I've been looking at this. This section, permit required, basically has two sentences that are negative. No person shall engage or conduct, and no person shall engage or conduct. It doesn't say, what you just explained to us was that a permit is required of 50 or more people. It doesn't say that under the section that is permit required. Yeah, so, I mean, I had to go look somewhere else to find it. And so that kind of would be to me, the lead off. Permit is required with 50 or more people. And then you have these two caveats. Okay, next section.
I have a question for, where is it? The conditional, what is it called? Conditional permit? Conditional use permit?
So
And where
that's-
is that in the definitions?
That's just referring to any other conditional use that somebody might have or have had. I think that's what you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's on page 5. I was on the wrong page. Section A, any activity within the scope of a conditional use permit. Is that something that needs to be in the definitions or does not need to be?
We can take that.
I had a question on that whole sentence is, what does it mean and why is it here?
Yeah, I got a question mark.
I guess that's why I'm asking it, because I was just looking for the definition of the conditional use permit.
So, you know, my thought is that what that's written for, and this came from a little different word.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
So, in a lot of community conditional uses are, they put conditions on, you know, like a CUP that allows for certain events or something. It's a event center or something, so they're allowed to, like Haystack here, if we wanted to allow them not to come in for anything, then they could get a conditional use permit for event space.
Right, okay.
That's a different approval process that they would come through, because every event space would come through, you get a conditional use permit that allows them to do parties anytime they want, up to 300 people or something, or under their fire. And so that CUP, then, yeah, I'm not saying
Don't do
we're gonna
that,
allow it,
please.
but I'm saying that that's how those often work together, and that's why that's, we can probably scrap that unless we've had conditional uses in the past that are still active, kind of like that bed and breakfast thing that came up that a lot of us didn't really know that when we said this. I'll investigate that just to see if I see anything like that in any conditional uses that, you know, and call it by law.
Yeah, well, I would be comfortable scratching it, but yeah, look it up.
Well, is it addressed anywhere else in this current
No,
draft? Okay,
that's the only place that I know of.
thank you, Jeff.
I had, the next question is the B, a spontaneous assembly of 50 or more persons. My understanding of, my definition of spontaneous would be if you had I'll reference something that, I recently had somebody who was deceased and some folks went out on the street and had some fun. Whether that went over 50 people or not, I don't know. So,
City manager counted.
but, you know, right down item 2, you have to have 36 hours notice ahead of time to let Jason know that you're going to do this. And I understand the reasoning behind that, but kind of puts a kibosh on spontaneous.
I'll tell you.
So I understand it.
Prove that and create safety
Okay. The next one is lawful picketing. My only question, and this, I just don't know, what makes a lawful picketing lawful? Who decides that?
I would have to ask, most of
Teachers
these
union.
things are kind of, you know, person-in type of things.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that, that's what.
Okay.
It's going to be location, and I can't tell you what it is, but there are locations.
Right, okay. I'm just curious. It might be interesting or necessary at some point to reference what that lawful means.
And we should know what it is so that if it comes up, we're all ready to deal with it.
I would imagine that the small little group that pickets or has picketed at Whale Park, for instance, anti-war group, that would be considered lawful picketing.
Yes, depending on how, yes. I'm not sure if being, in what's defined as a park is lawful, but probably it is. But we need to define it. Or if we want to make an exception, we probably need to say that the exception would be this.
What I
Generally,
have
that means you can't
seen in the,
block traffic, you can't block pedestrian access to the buildings. You know, it deals with usually labor picketing. Yes. And there are state rules on that, or state laws that you have to comply with.
Brandon?
Well, I'm just, was anecdotally, what I've seen in the past is somebody that had a grievance with some type of labor, but they picketed up on the highway, and my assumption is they wanted to get as many people viewing what they were picketing as possible, and I assume that's outside the city limits and is outside our jurisdiction.
I believe you'd be correct, it's outside of jurisdiction.
And then there's no problem doing it.
It might be somebody else's problem.
It's not ours.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, like, if
Yes.
you're out in the middle of 101, that would be state problem.
They were not doing that, but they just were looking for visibility is what I assume. I'm not saying, I'm just saying this is what I have seen in the past. And I don't know, is that something that we'd want to address for somebody doing the same thing inside the city limits? Is that what this is
That's what
saying?
this does. It's an exception
All right.
of the special events rule that, so if somebody is picketing, it's kind of an exception. I don't know if there were 52 people picketing, or that'd make a big difference or not. So, yeah, 200, yeah, that would. Well, I don't know. Okay, moving on. Unless anybody else has anything else. Next item is the Special Events Committee. This seems to be a big question to me. I don't understand why we need to do this. The whole document, I went through the document, and every reference in here is to staff. As far as, once we've set the document, we've got the criteria established, it's simply a matter of the staff checking the boxes. There's one reference at one point, and I can't find it really quick, but where it does actually mention doesn't even mention it by name, but it's the governing body or something like that. So I don't see a reason for this, so Bruce, if you want to.
Well, I think that there needs to be a special event review. I think that it's unfortunate that at some point it's called a committee because we've never met as a group. It's kind of a linear thing where this person signs off, this one signs off, until it finally gets to me. So, anyway, we don't have a committee that actually meets that way. The next thing is that if you look at section B, it talks about the things that we do. As far as, in reviewing from a
That's my question too.
Yeah.
I don't know. And is this a standing appointed committee? It says appointed by the Parks Department, but they don't appoint committees. The council appoints committees.
Yeah.
So it's not really a sanctioned
Right.
committee.
Well,
What is it?
It might, it would be if it was approved as written, it would become a committee, but also the way that it works, we don't know how many are going to come in. Sometimes something comes in and it's got a short fuse on it. Some other ones, longer. We have, I guess, what would become ex parte communications or something, because if we were acting as a committee, I know that like a year or two ago, there was a lot of discussion with Sandcastle. And it was because we wanted to get out of being in the business of having a lot of police officers on the beach. And so we were, the chief and I were going to meetings, with the Sandcastle committee and sorted that through. That's the kind of thing that we get involved in. And so I would be able to say, like, if we did this once a month, something else might come in the middle. And right now with our current process, we can handle it. But if we said, no, it's only going to be on these dates, then we might, be stopping something. So, but my big question is, what would those folks do as part of this process, unless there's other items that are added? But one thing, and I think we discussed this at the planning commission, is that there's really not an ability to say, you can't do that event. And we can't say, we just want to, we don't want to, we just decided that we don't want to meet all the requirements, all that. I think that gets us to some First Amendment issues.
Well, the other question I have is, would these 3 residents be members of the Parks Committee, or would they be outside of the Parks Committee, or a combination of membership?
I think, I don't think we sort of totally define it, exactly how that's going to operate.
Well, my preference would be just scratch this whole section, because it doesn't even relate to anything that we would functionally do.
Should be able to have the authorization to do what we just now.
No, it's lined out in, I counted at least half a dozen more places where it says specifically, police department, city manager, or public works.
I think just a review, like you said, special review.
Yeah.
As long as they're signed off on it.
And
Call us a panel.
And Bruce would always be able to, if there was an event that came in that was, a third sandcastle contest type thing, bring it to the council. You always have that ability to bring it to an agenda item. If there's a question about what's being proposed.
I'd just like to know why the Parks Committee felt strongly about having 3 residents. It was planning.
Planning.
So planning felt strongly.
Right.
Can you please tell me why that was? And
I think they wanted more citizen oversight.
yeah, okay. And personally, I feel that the public input is valuable, and that's how our government works. So just having staff check things off, which is what I've heard over and over again, it doesn't quite cover, in my mind, what the impact of an event might be on the citizens. So I would like to see some way that they could review it on a monthly basis. You have given plenty of time for people to apply for permits. So it isn't like you can't catch it in the month. I think that there could be, and usually I know with the Parks Committee, we had 1 representative, and then there were 2 other people from outside that would do things. So I personally feel you're taking away the public input, and I think that's a very sorry state.
I'm trying to figure out what the committee would be approving. Are they approving the event? Yes or no on this event? Are they approving the parking and traffic control. I don't know, I just don't know what they do other than be interested. And maybe there's a
But
better
is that
way.
for us to decide?
Well,
I
that's what we-
mean, I
that's what we
think
were
public
elected for, yeah.
Well, public input's very important, and for us to cubbyhole what they're supposed to come out of that, I think is too bad.
Well, I think we're not doing, I would think instead of the committee created by and appointed by Parks, that all of those come to either a work session or go to the order. This is, especially if it's a new event. If it's a new event, it's probably going to get bumped off to the planning commission or the parks or whoever it impacts. I think we want to know about it. We want to know what's going on.
Wouldn't it go to
And-
TAC?
May,
No, well,
That's not necessarily.
only if they're asking for money.
probably not. It could, but, and if it does that, then there is that public input.
There is, yeah.
So I think there's got to be an awareness of these things, that it's not just done behind the doors of City Hall and nobody's aware of it. But these are significant events, and so people will be aware of it.
Well, I just look at it as being in an in-basket and checking it off and handing it to the next person without much scrutiny.
There's a lot of scrutiny. So if it's an insurance requirement, police, sanitation issue, or anything like that, it's just that has to be solved before it moves. So it's not just checking the box, and I probably understated that, but we are looking at all the conditions, again, if you go over to page 13, those are the things that it all goes through. And I understand your point, if you're looking for some kind of an oversight or something, I would ask that it be set up as a separate entity, and so that staff can go through this function, and we can say, that, yes, we're good for sanitation, police, blah, 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 all the way through, and then if you want somebody else to review it, and then make a recommendation to you, or to make a recommendation, well, actually, I would need one, the recommendation to come back to me at that point, but I don't see the need for that on this, because, does that mean, that they have a veto power?
A common model, City of St. Mary's where I work, major events were just what Bruce just said. We had the staff review, and then for a major event had to be council. So that's when that model is pretty common model.
I think that if there's going to be, call it oversight, it needs to be separate from our process, which is going out. And if they make a recommendation to you, if that's the route that you choose, then that, I don't have a problem with that, as long as we don't have, say, residents having veto power. I think they can recommend to you, and you would have veto power over our decision. I think that's the appropriate way for it to go.
Could it be
Saying that-
reviewed by the Parks Committee first, and with a recommendation from the Parks Committee to the council? After you have done all of your, I don't know if that's an extra layer of bureaucracy that,
It's another month of time.
yeah.
It seems to me if there is going to be such a committee, the Parks Committee may be one that recommends that the council has to basically endorse that committee through election or agreement. But then that committee should report, like other committees, standing committees report to the council, not back to the city staff. And that is, I hate to tell you, but we are the public. So,
The issue is also, we are creating, this is the public input, is creating these criteria. So, if you don't like the criteria, now is the time to change it and make, because that's the public input. Once we have a set of rules, somebody applying for an event goes to the set of rules and says, okay, I'm willing to live under these rules. And then you follow all the little points and you fill out all the blanks and you pass it over you get your permit. You followed the rules. Now, if somebody comes in and says, oh, I don't like this, you can't do that. You can't make rules and then have the option to say, oh, don't follow the rules anymore because we don't like what you're presenting. So that's just I don't know, that really, so, if you have problems with the rules that we're forming, now is the time to present it. We'll do this. It'll eventually go to a public hearing. If we want, we could do a couple public hearings on this specifically, so we get all the input back we can. But once we set the criteria, those are the rules we're going to follow until we tweak it, and we'll find some problems, I'm sure. And it also might get to a point where we get super huge events coming in. That's when staff says, oh my God, these rules aren't working, comes back to the city council and says, do we want to do this? So having constant nitpicking at it in the process of every process is counterproductive.
So could we have a public meeting to review all of this?
We will, it has to be, it's an ordinance.
Yeah,
So, and if you want, we can do it a couple times if we have to.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I'd like to hear from the public.
Robin, to your point, what would you envision that the citizen committee would be able to do?
They have their feet on the ground there, and so
But I mean-
think
I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
it would be what we can't anticipate.
Sure. But would you envision them having a veto power over the event?
Not really, it would be more, if it's all made at the same time, which I guess a committee's doing,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe it should be at the front end and not the back end.
But it would just be a recommendation. Okay.
That would be council, that recommendation. I mean, it goes to council, but, and I guess just, one question, is I'm having trouble envisioning what problem it is we're trying to solve. So, and I know, I'll give you an example, the one that we do, I don't know how much we could do. I know people are not crazy about the timing of the recording, festival, or whatever you call it. We have just a tiny piece of that, we don't approve it, it's on the beach, it's all that. The only thing we approve is location of Portland. And so we don't have, the track, so we don't have, the state parks is saying that we can do it, and we're just acknowledging we can have a big bunch of people there, so we make it so that we've got sanitation facilities. So, there's, even with something like that, I know that it's not popular, I wish we would do it a different time, but, that's not something like the public would come in and say, no, we don't want to do it in July or August or whatever it is, because we're a tiny piece. And the only thing we can do is say, you can't have a portal. That's the extent of our involvement. So we're kind of limited.
okay, we're good? We're going to move on, we got a long ways to go. Next item is,
Has Jeff finished going through, you were doing section by section, right?
Yeah, I went through it, but, that's the thing, would you like to move on to another item on the agenda? Because I can bring this back with
okay,
some of the input you've already given me, and bring it back to the next
yeah, the application is the next section, so we'll move on to that. This is a big section. I've got a few nitpicky things and a couple, I guess I'll start right off. I have a problem with the major-minor separation. And I can't decide myself whether, it makes sense. I can understand it from a staff level, that one gets bigger and has a little more attention needs to be made to it. Jeff's block, that made more sense to me than the way it's written. There's a lot of things here, though, that I'm seeing the difference is not working. So with that, just going to some nitpicky stuff now. On number 6 of C on page 6, that one is, to me, two separate items. You've got the identification of the location, and then you have a copy of the business license. So to me, those are two separate sections. And then on top of that, the first one, identification of location, should be on the site plan. So it should be down under number 9, to me. I mean, if you're going to have a site plan, it's going to tell you where it is. The next thing about the site plan number 9, just structurally, I would put it at the end so that you have, what you have right now is two checklists, one within the other, which kind of, it's confounding. Just
You were, put number 9 where?
towards, right after or at number 17,
Okay, yeah,
and then you have the next breakout after that. That's just a structural thing. In the site plan 1, number 9B, you've got the term prefabricated structures. I know that's a term that just plop it out. I would just say portable. Because prefabricated sounds like somebody's going to build something there that might stay for a while. Just a weird term.
So get rid of prefabricated and just keep portable,
Yeah.
or put any kind of, maybe,
Well, it's a portable structure, because if it's a temporary event, and they're going to put up something, we don't know what it is, it's a portable structure. So, all the way down to U, it says, any vehicles to be located in an enclosed area. Now, I'm seeing this as a site plan, so are we trying to locate the enclosed area or all the vehicles? So that term just, it should be something like vehicle enclosures or something like that. Actually, that's pretty good. I got just little typo thingies, but all the way down on D, we get back to that term spontaneous, which confused me because if it's an exemption to have a spontaneous event, why is it listed under the application criteria? Either put it as, I would almost put it as its own little thing, make its own headline, and just say spontaneous events are A and B, and then cover both of those.
I think it's almost an oxymoron.
It is.
You have an application, you have spontaneous demonstration.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we.
But if we have to let Jason know, because there's 3 pertinent, I think, C1, C7, C11 are pertinent information.
Right.
So why not have that as a semi-spontaneous event, so that those could be done quickly?
Short notice event.
There you go.
and it gives Jason the ability to say, hey, you at least have to have this.
Yeah, that's good. Applications for repeated. Yeah, this is actually the first mention here of any sort of application for a private property event.
What
goes-
page are you
Yeah.
on?
I'm on 8
8,
now.
E,
8E,
Page what?
the first E
8.
on 8.
Sorry. Anybody else have anything else for that section?
Yeah, I had a question about, well, I can't see the darn, it's all blocked. So of the line, yeah, I can't go through that right now. No. We're not on fees yet. I can't, my page number is blocked, so I can't see what page I'm on.
Oh, fees are next.
That's a separate one? Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else for the application section? I'll move on to fees then, Nancy.
The third-party fee, D, is that fee required in addition to the temporary business license fee that for merchandising? In additional, okay. So they're paying 2 fees to sell?
I had a note here, on that also, the third party probably would help if that was in definitions. And same thing with vendors. That kind of is it's not a vague term, but it is enough of a term that we want to be clear about. Going up to the first two, A and B, that's the major minor. Those two paragraphs are identical. The A and B. I guess that was another concern I had, why separate major and minor? Doesn't make sense to me to separate it.
Because everywhere else, they're talking about, there's minor events, major events. They're going to have the same fee. But otherwise, you'd say any event.
I would say any event. And I guess I'm going to get to it because we got major and minor coming up. But I'm going to say any event for that too. So,
I'm just going to put this on file, but I don't think we should solve it in the near future. Jeff and I are both used to working in communities that leverage their properties and things like that, and so charge fees. And we don't charge any fees, and we don't even recover our costs. So I think that's a policy decision for you to look at down the road. Do we want to promote by making it easy to have it and then pay money, have it so that we recover our fees, or do we want to make it some kind of revenue? I think that's worth taking a look at.
okay. Anybody else?
Only that, and I don't think this is the time for the discussion, but it's along your lines of how much for the fees. Is there an idea about how much those would be?
I can do, that's what I was gonna do, once we get to that stage where we're comfortable.
Okay.
Talking about fees and things, then when I bring you kind of an example, or a sampling of other, just like with the, next thing that we're talking about, building fees.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. The next section is police enforcement kind of stuff. I have no comments on that one. The one after that is release and indemnification requirement. No comments. Insurance requirements. No comment. Then we get down to major special event signage. Again, I would scratch major and just call it special event signage. That's my preference, just because special event.
I would note, that there, in the minor ones, there's specific ones for each minor, they're a little different, I believe. I'll compare them. If they are different, I'll show you maybe I'll take a different.
Okay, probably get there. On number A2, and I'm now on page 10, it says not exceed 16 square feet in sign area with a minimum letter sizes of 4 inches. Having been on design review, the old question of is that each or total? Per sign, or the total of all signs?
There is a total,
Yes, listen.
It's down on D, I think.
yeah, each venue sign in the village shall be less than 50 total square feet in the sign area. So each sign's limited to 16 square feet, so, doing the math, you can have 3 of those big balloons and small ones, but we want it to 16.
Okay. You might say then something earlier, put that one up earlier.
Put that maybe at the top.
Yeah, just so it figures out. I was a little surprised at the posting, the This is number 4, 10 days prior. We ever done that before? Posted a maximum of 15 and a minimum of 10 days prior to the scheduled closure. So if you're closing a road for a while,
We've never, I don't think we closed streets, or I haven't heard of that, but, you know, I've never worked in a jurisdiction that doesn't put a posting in, just as a notice. And we've actually had calls in saying, well, we would like to turn it out.
okay.
I don't know if that time is appropriate, I'm not talking that, I do know that we've had comments from merchants and others that would like to set a.
Yeah. That one just kind of surprised me, so I'm not really for or against either way. We got all the way down to E, still on page 10. That one read to me like it was a traffic control sign, and it should be up under C. So we keep the traffic control ones together. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything for that one? Moving on to the notifications section, page 11. I had a big question on, so that'd be A3, 4, both of those. First time event at a city facility that is not authorized by a facility use permit.
To read that about 3 times
I
and
still don't
quite
understand
know
what that
it
means. And in that, the 4 says the same thing.
That's, those are the ones that have been under, you know, they used to do it, but they stopped doing it and they won't bring it back. So what we're trying to say really, if you're gonna be doing a major event, or you're gonna be using, city facilities, and it's your first time doing any of that, then you need to get it major.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we use this city facilities, use, Trent's Pace Stack Rock every year, to reserve the council chambers and other groups.
The different watersheds.
Yeah, and some nursing groups and stuff. When they want to reserve the council chambers, they fill out that form and they have their insurance, they have everything that they need, and there's some criteria about what you can and cannot do. And that's a form that, we've had for a long time. It's very similar to this event permit. And I don't know if there's any backing for the rules that are,
Okay, I guess the sentence is just really wonky here, because
Yeah, it doesn't.
what it's saying is not authorized by facility use permit.
What does that mean?
So that
Because
means
the question is, what is
no,
both?
nothing could be done in that facility if it's not authorized to use it for a special event. That's what it says. So it needs to be adjusted to what Colleen just said, in that if you want to use a city facility, you need a permit. Whether they've not used it in the past or have, I don't know. That one just, it's really weird.
facility use permit.
And then I just followed along that section 4 has this huge paragraph right behind it that literally is a bunch of bullet points. And it would read easier if it was bullet points. But
What section are you talking about?
section 4, A4,
I don't
Well,
know
that's-
that big paragraph there.
yeah.
But does that one paragraph applies to all events 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Well, if it does, it just break it down.
It's not
It's
just
easier to
4.
read. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it looks like there's a sentence missing because it starts out, shall sponsor a meeting.
Well,
Well,
The applicant
The
shall-
first time is it the applicant, says the applicant for up above, and then it says shall sponsor a meeting, so it doesn't make a lot of sense.
The applicant for a first-time major event shall sponsor a meeting for all affected parties. That's the way I read it.
Not the way it's written, but that's.
Yeah, probably,
We definitely defer to your editorial skills.
Yeah, I
well,
had to,
it just said for the following events, and then list them, 1, 2, 3, 4, the applicant shall hold this meeting.
That might work.
it could really be cleaned up, that paragraph.
Let Nancy do it. She's good at that.
Next one, we're moving on. Standards for review. This one, I couldn't understand why there's a difference between 1 and 2. There are things in 1 that are not in 2, and there's things in 2 that are not in 1 that could be a potential problem if you're reviewing them under just one category and you've missed something else. That confused me. And this keeps going until it gets to the major event. And then I realize there's a whole bunch of stuff in the major that's not in either of the other two that are, and I'm just going to use one example because to me this is all really chopped up. But one example is the major event actually mentions staff to ensure safety of the event. There's no mention of safety in either section 1 or 2 of the minor event.
Yeah, because if these, in other words, if a minor event, if it comes before this assistant city manager in this process, and she, and say they're applying for a minor, and she looks like this is gonna cause more than, we're gonna need, it's gonna impact public, services or public facilities or whatever, if she deems that, she can bump that up to a major. That's what that's done. So the major requires all of that.
That I understand. This doesn't say that.
Yeah, well, this doesn't, that's, up in the, process.
Okay, but these are the
Yeah, so if it's,
standards for review.
yeah, but that's only if the assistant city manager, agrees that it is a minor. If she doesn't agree that it's a minor, then it, moved up to.
Okay, well, let's say she agrees,
Can be appealed.
let's say she agrees it's a minor.
Yeah.
These are the standards for the minor. So you got 150 people meeting in some spot, because that's under the 200, and you don't have any safety plan?
But that's the thing, it doesn't have to be 200 to be a major. That's the automatic trigger.
Okay, that's the automatic trigger. But,
It is a major.
If it's over 50, and I think, hey, this could be a problem, I can still bump it.
Still a
to
major.
It has no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna allow, it just to be a minor without, public works and police and fire, look at this, because this is kind of dangerous.
I think we're making work for ourselves. I think if we just have one set of standards for any special event over 50 people, make sure everybody checks all the boxes for a special event, and then we can use the standards of just one big combined list to follow it through. You don't have that, if it's obvious that you don't need, an ambulance on site, but you do need a first aid kit, and they say they've got a first aid kit, that means the safety plan has been checked.
Well,
No,
what my concern with that, is if we have, let's say 70% or 80% of our events are minors, and we've got A through Q, and most of those minors only require A through D or whatever,
like the lamp lighting.
Yeah, well, that's 150. But that's the kind of thing, yes, where you're back,
Well, and it's staff that has to make this determination and understand this, the difference between minor and major. This is a review. It's not, all the rest of us or the public needs to understand that distinction. That would be staff understanding that distinction that we're discussing here.
in this case, Colleen is the gatekeeper, and, you know, she's really good at knowing and has dealt with enough of these. But if something is going through, it is a minor, and then Karen says, wait a second, this is going to be a bigger deal than I think, or Jason does, you know, we talk about that, and we've got the flexibility to make that change based on this. And but to Sam's point, I think that, having like a single list of things that might be included, it might become a little bit harder if it's something that is not a major list unless we have language to allow us to jump over, or specific conditions to jump over to the major.
Jeff, could you have a list that's, you know, A through R is for minor events, and if it's a major event, then it's the rest of the alphabet.
That kind of cheats your, that's what, that's exactly how I started when I drafted this. But found that, you know, as Sam said, you know, there's little things that are not in each one, where there's a better reason, because those kind of events usually call for these type of things. But I can look at that and see where they agree, where they overlap, and see if there's these, J, and the others. So let me look and see if there might be there's some
A lot of this seemed to me that it would be self-regulating, like the signage item, you know. A small event might want to have a 4x4 sign, but that's the only sign they would want. So they would check off the box that, yes, I've had only a 4x4 sign. They don't need to go up to the 50 square feet, whereas another event will go up, and that will be noted. So in that sense, it's just,
Yeah, my experience, if they've got a 16-foot sign that they allow, and they can go to a 50, they'll try to go to a 50.
well, yeah, but that's not the kind of thing I think the separation should
Right.
define.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Signs are one thing that everybody pushes the envelope on.
Yeah, for example, I guess.
Are we going to eliminate the guy that stands on the corner with an arrow and flips it? And just okay, as long as that's covered, I'm good with.
That's my future career. Away my retirement plan.
Anybody else in that section? Okay, next one is conditions. This is the only one that mentions a decision-making body. The one directly after that is notice of denial. Again, I question why we separate things, but
So if I go back to the conditions, I think that whatever term we're using, if it's a panel or whatever, the review probably should be used there. So we know what
Yeah.
it is.
Well, the reason I say it's a decision making, why I say you use the term there is because I could be that person, public works could be, and so it is a different, you know, work to do that.
On some instances,
Yeah.
actually might be that easy.
Yeah.
It's usually just under.
well, you also say that elsewhere where the city manager has the opportunity to make offer alternatives. Yeah, that's down here in alternatives. That first section in notice of denial, the last sentence really struck me as odd. The application will be notified within 2 working days of said determination, where you have just given between the major and minor section 2 time limits. Then you've added 2 days. So, I don't know, that just seemed kind of weird. And then the next paragraph,
You're saying
Well, what it says is the city manager gets to make a determination within 28 days, and then it takes 2 days to notify you. Why not just say 30 days? And just make sure the notification happens within that 30 days. And then the next paragraph is even, to me, the applicant shall be, the whole thing, does not act on a special event application in 15 days prior to event, the application shall be deemed denied. That just really irked me. That's just bad form. We should guarantee the fact that if you're going to be denied, you're going to get a letter saying you're denied. If you just don't do it, that's bad form. Sorry.
Which is the opposite of ordinances, or, and if we don't act, then it's deemed approved.
Yeah. And you can't just deem something approved because you've got all these conditions involved. But if you're going to deny it, you've got to have an effort to say, give them some notification. Anybody else? Next item is alternatives. I only thought that this sentence could be fixed. The city manager, in denying an application for a special permit, may authorize the conduct of the special event date or route. I don't know, that one twisted me up. I would take portions of it and shift it around. But I don't want to get too nitpicky anymore. Moving on. Did I miss one? Appeal procedure, I have no problems with. The next one, notice to city and other officials. This seemed odd because if they're doing a review by mostly city, I guess I understood it, but it took me a while to figure it out. That's all.
It's just closing the loop, make sure everybody.
Yeah, it's making sure everybody knows, but it took me a while to figure out what we were talking about. Special events calendar, pretty obvious. Contents of permit. Is this something that has to be in the ordinance? I could see it in a handbook, but I don't really see why it needs to be in the ordinance. Because you've listed all this criteria that has to be there. That's just trying to save us some paper.
It's just kind of putting out there what we.
Yeah, personally, I'd rather see a nice list on the handbook of what we need to do when you're signing up.
Do they have do you have a handbook?
Not yet.
Will.
We got to get through this first and then create one.
No one was planned.
Anything in, where are we? Violations, next section. Okay, that, I had one thing in, I'm going all the way to wherever the definitions were for the zoning.
Page 19.
I don't have the same pages on this one, so the zoning definitions, the last one, which is the window sign. Yeah. That one, I understand where you're getting at, but painted on, or I would say temporarily painted on, etched or permanently affixed? Because then you have that, both the permanent and the temporary kind of touching.
Wouldn't we want me to sign, wouldn't we want permanently painted on? You know what I mean, that's what.
Well, you need to, I'm looking at it from the special events kind of thing, but you need to look at it in both the real life and, yeah. So, I get, yeah, permanent painted or temporary painted. Because, you know, like a grocery store can paint up a 35-cent sale or something like that, and just leave it up for a month. We don't want that. But for a special event, would that be possible? So,
See, they'll have a sign, they'll be able to sign the ordinance of the special permit.
okay. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry I had so many things, but this one is a big ordinance and it needs a lot of details. I do have other ideas. I've done some research on some other places that have had events, but this covered it pretty well. There was a few other places that had very specific definitions for food trucks or food carts. I didn't think we wanted to get into that kind of detail, but we might in the future. So,
Well, would you like me to make a change and bring it back to another work session?
sure. Yeah, there's no big rush on this. It'd be nice to get it really hammered out before Sandcastle, but they're already in that process, so.
A lot of them are already.
Anybody else have anything?
Nope.
Comfortable with moving on? Okay. Where were we? E-permitting and new building department fees. Yeah.
So this is that was an easy one. This one's another fun one. Okay. So I'm going to try to kind of like is for at least to get a timeline set with you guys to where if we're gonna put that May 8th day out there, we really need to be kind of set for that because, this is to the state, we're going live on this date, they have a certain notification timeline. And so even if we have to do some extra meetings prior, special calls, to be able to launch on that day, we decide to set, that's the important thing. Deerheart, I included Deerheart's packets in your packets because this is relevant data. They're doing this as well, and they're updating their fees. And you can see the last time they updated theirs was 2005, and those are the dates beside some of those others in the land use component here. But we'll get into some of that numbers. And then what I tried to do was take from them what Carol and the city manager up there have pulled together, and then add some of our kind of local ones that are missing and for comparison purposes, so you guys have some context to put these numbers in. The building piece comparison, one of the things we'll talk about is that we drew heavily from Clatsop County. We're almost mirroring Clatsop County because not only do we think that it's probably one of the more comparable of the different areas, but they're the latest to kind of go live with new permitting. As we talk in our building services discussion a little bit later, one of the scenarios is we might have Clatsop County do our building services for us. That would be a natural transition to have similar fees for both of ours. You'll see the Deerheart when it locks towards the Clatsop County fees and their proposed updated their fees. That timeline that we have, I set for tonight, the work session, and then to have a public hearing in March. That's aggressive, but just showing kind of the timeline that would meet those dates. So, I'd love to have that discussion as we move through this. It doesn't have to be, right now, but as we dig into this, to have that. Any thoughts and questions before we start going into section by section or, each part of it? I think that's all we can provide. And so the first thing I think in your package is the building code ordinance amendment.
It is.
And so with that, one of the things I wanted to point out in that is that the powers and duties currently within this ordinance, I don't know, the last time it was updated was 1997, I believe. And the code enforcement agency is underneath the building official in 1997. It's not anymore. It works out of our police department. So not only updating this building fees and code, this gives us the opportunity to kind of clean up some of this that's out there and not how we truly operate. You'll also see a few pages over under the housing code, under H section of 1504110, enforcement of various state codes. You'll see that that's got an old code reference. I updated that, and also on the fee section, updated to the current language that they're recommending for us to fees. Are there any questions on that building ordinance update, building code ordinance update?
Just moving forward, is there a reason there's no page numbers on this?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That is my fault.
So you'll correct that? Okay, thank you, Jeff.
And, I think I like working with the line numbers as well, so from now on, we'll have that as kind of our standard for fee ordinance. So, if there's no other questions on that, send us what they felt were comparable communities and their current fees, and I've listed some of those in that table. And then they sent us classic counties as well, and I pulled from Deerheart. So if you look at that, your different, what I've given you, Exhibit A is of course the building code proposed. B is the proposed land use fee schedule. Like I said, that's the current one. I didn't change that at all, but if we're doing a new ordinance, I want to add that as part of that. Attachment C is our current fee schedule. D is our current land use schedule. And then you get into E, and that was that document I showed you earlier, Division 50 Building Code, that where they're highlighting, and this is the state that did this for us, is part of our review of going online, is they want to get everything correct when we do go live with the permit, is that highlighted in blue is the general code section, and then identified in green is methodology requirements, and pink are the minimum fee requirements. And so each one of these, they've corrected and reviewed what we proposed as our new, and they compared that against that. And everything checks out with that. I've also.
So is their review of that, is that sufficient? Is that all we need to do to get their approval or concurrence?
Yeah, they're fine, you know, after we issue them that letter.
Yeah.
Put them on notice.
But they've already, they're aware of those fee changes, even though we haven't given them a letter.
Yeah,
So if we were to change something now,
they're fine, yeah, well, they're fine, they are fine with, both the e-permitting and the state review board said, yeah, no, they understand we're still going through the changing process. So they'll compare if we make changes, but whatever we do, we're not gonna change now that form. So if it's a flat fee, we're not gonna change it over to an hourly, we'll just change the hourly.
I see, okay.
Okay. And so 2004, I gave you the 2004, and then, of course, the Deerheart packet for both their building and land use, which I found interesting. And then attachment I is the comparison fee schedule. And if you want to look at that one, that's the fold out, comparing 2020 proposed Cannon Beach 2004, along with Deerheart 2005, 2020, Newburgh 2017, Seaside 2009, Sirius, that's it. And then there's the- Any questions on any of those?
Jeff, at the beginning of your presentation, and you mentioned how our current building fee schedule, we're just losing money. Does raising this fee put us to a break-even point? Does it take us to making,
I think we will be making some, you know, if we consider construction continues, if this doesn't, you know, this may have some effect on construction. I don't know, I haven't looked at numbers of communities that did raise them and, you know, if it impacted them much. I can look into that, but, you know, if you did this comparison and you look at what we are currently collecting and then you put that increase above, yes, we will be pulling back up above that number.
I guess I would ask, what is the accepted structure within communities? I'm sure there's not an exact standard, but since we haven't changed them for nearly 20 years, you know, we need to look to the future, so either that or update them more.
Well, this is definitely, what this represents kind of the model of, you know, what they're going to. Because, like I said, Clatsop County is within the year of what they just went live a year ago. And they're kind of what we modeled it on. And then we had the input of, I think, 5 other communities that they gave us their exact formulas
Mhm.
I'm not the expert, but I do see the points that, you know, I definitely have never worked in a community where they have not updated.
Sure, I'm actually quite surprised.
And I think, Brandon, if you're asking what level of recovery you try to get, okay, in most cases, you want to recover 100% of the cost of your the building services. If you don't, it's funded by the general fund.
Exactly.
And so everybody else is paying for everybody else's.
That's exactly my
So
point,
there's that one.
Bruce.
You also try to recover a little bit more, so that, because it's going to be somewhat cyclical, and so you try to set it up that there's enough money in the fund, that if you have a downturn, and you still want to continue to have a building official, that you don't have to pull from the general fund to do that. So you try to build up some, you know, somewhat of a reserve, excuse me, to get you through a period of time, but you can build that up over like a year, 2 years or something. So it's enough to cover the cost, so nobody else has to pay it, plus have enough to cover yourself in the downturn, okay, because unless you're not gonna have a building official, you're gonna need to move money over from the general fund, and that's not the time you want to do it.
I guess my question is that is the amount that we're in this proposal to raise the fees, are we doing it in a way that creates this huge ending fund balance, or are we doing it so that the projection is that we would meet costs and have, you know, a little bit extra?
And all I can say is that, you know, we looked at, you know, example comparisons, right? And because a lot of what you're paying for in the building permit is that state surcharge, that focusing surcharge, and the affordable housing component. Those are big components, and I'll give you this, you'll see a comparison of that median home value. And so if we were to take that, say, 20% rise, that's what this is for this typical median home, and we expand that out of all the building permits that we're doing over the year, that's where I'm looking at, about a 20% increase in that revenue coming in.
Thank you.
So I don't think it's, you know, too much, huge, but it gives us a little cushion over what the next.
Okay, no, that's exactly what I'm asking, Jeff. Thank you.
Jeff, some of these fees, I think, will, the revenue from them will increase with inflation or rising construction costs. Some are just flat fees until we change it again. They're not variable. So we'll build in some cushion by the mere fact we assume housing values go up, construction costs go up, so that'll generate increases in revenues without changing the fee structure.
Well, one of the things that I also want to point out with the youth permit system is not only contractors and all those, our professionals that we deal with, all of their licensing and everything is updated nightly with the state. So when you're able to track current licensing and who's operating in compliance on the site, but also all the updated kind of state fee list. So, you know, if you're doing state construction, we have kind of a average state fee for this kind of addition and all that, each type of fixture and all of that. And that's calculated within, it's pre-calculated, and that's automatically updated too through the state. So we can see that. So it's, if they give us a building, you know, estimate, we compare that immediately with that with the state numbers. And so I think it's a much more transparent system. It gives not only us, the contractors, more knowledge of what's out there. What the price is.
Jeff, I've got two questions. What is the potential of will affect any potential affordable housing construction here? And then the other question I have is how much, is there a percentage limit that contractors can use from the Affordable Housing Fund to defray some of the costs?
So we have that, currently we're getting 1%
It's over 100,000.
It's, the last I saw was over 100,000.
Yeah, it's about 109,000, something like that.
80,000 a year, and we've only not used it once. But, so you're gaining from, having more income coming in on that component. But the other thing, whether we exempt affordable housing, certain things like that, yes, I know that other communities do some of that. And what ours allows is just like with CBARC and others, we can, that's what those fees are, funds we're collecting, we allow to use those funds to do that.
Is there a limit to how much they, a percentage limit that they can draw from that fund?
There are kind of breakdowns in how much they can use and how much they can state or something like that. I can get those numbers for you. It's in our order.
There's also a difference between the amount of money that's generated through residential permitting and commercial permitting. They're able to do more with the money that comes from the commercial permits.
And also, when we talk about this fund, at the current rates, unless we start building a whole lot of things, we're never, I don't believe, we'll reach a point that we can afford to build affordable housing with those funds. What we'll be able to do is to offset, utility charges, those kind of things, to provide incentives, but the numbers are not going to be, in the millions in the next couple of years.
But if we, and I'm not necessarily arguing against an increase in building fees, but if we do increase the building fees, is that going to discourage any affordable housing any more than it's discouraged anyway?
I would say on that point, this gets back to that type, housing type that we showed and everything. Just off the cuff, I don't believe that we built multifamily housing or any kind of what we would traditionally call affordable housing to that certain rate, not in the city of Cannon Beach, that hasn't, possibly these were the last ones that I know of, but we haven't done any, you can see from that table that I showed, in all the classes of county roads. And so anything that we're going to go is going to take, we're going to have to help with these kind of affordable housing funds that we're collecting from and, like we talk about regionally, to think about where affordable housing can go across this county to serve us. It might not be the answer to it all for Cannon Beach, or we could do that in Cannon Beach. Other communities, we may have to pull our resources to figure out places where we all
I would take this a little bit out of the affordable housing realm and look at it in the a different light for the low income, small home kind of concern. If we have somebody with a small cabin and they have to make a decision whether they want to repair something or do a little remodel, and it costs that much more, does that or could that drive them into more of a consideration for short-term rental or some other way to change?
So that's a good point. I want you to look at that, what I just passed out. For almost a $500,000 house, it's a $2,000 difference. Okay? So take that down to 100,000 or 150 or 200,000, you're not going to be looking at probably a $750,000 difference.
I guess one area I'm looking at, I'm going back to attachment A, the first page, the very first structural permit fees. And you have it lined out by the estimate of the building. And each one of these goes up afterwards, after a base fee, or the lowest amount of the estimate, and then it jumps for every 1,000 after that. And yet this, from $2,000 project to a $25,000 project, you have a $13 per, I mean, it jumps pretty fast and it seems very weighted heavily for the small projects. Wouldn't it make more sense to weight it heavily for the expensive projects and not the small projects, where the ones that you might want to, maintaining a house compared to building a multi-million-dollar big one?
You on the special permit?
Yeah. You see where I'm looking at there? Let's see, from 500 to 2,000 goes up every 100 for 332. So that one I wouldn't worry about. But the 2,000 to 2,500 goes 1326. 25,000 to 50,000 goes 995. 5,000 to 100,000 jumps to 664.
So I'm
I
at,
don't-
I'm
that-
at, the start base number is $106, 1,500,
Mhm.
and then you're talking 501 to 2,000 for the next one.
Yeah. I don't know, that seemed like an area where we could balance it a little better for the small project, so it doesn't jump so fast for them. I don't know, where these numbers come from, if most of these are from the state mandate, kind of, okay.
It's not a state mandate. You'll see if you compare this, if you go to that comparison numbers for the different areas. Some start as low as $61, or like we did at Earhart, 61. But the averages are usually up there around in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And, we're Earhart, Clatsop, and our proposal are at 106.
Well, I just kind of was thinking if there was a way to make it more of a curve that went up towards the more expensive rather than, and I'd have to run a bunch of examples to figure out if it's really, and I don't know if the e-permitting program would allow you to plug in different numbers and,
I'm happy to kind of ask that. My understanding is just more of a formula, kind of notch up for each one of the levels.
yeah.
I can look into it, kind of see what that is, like you said, what's the curve on it.
I think generally the costs are supposed to be related to the effort. And I don't know if a smaller project relative to its cost takes more time than a bigger project. You spend a lot of money on finishing kind of thing. So I think that's something we have to make sure we don't go too far.
Well, I understand that.
Well, the other thing that I believe we should consider is what are the bulk of our permits? Because at the end of all of this is that, as you've pointed out, I don't feel we should be in a position to lose money. And if the bulk of our permits are all from smaller projects, we should be doing something that scales it accordingly in terms of the fees.
And the beauty of 3 years from now, I can still apply for what you have before.
Mhm.
Right now, that's going to take me some time and resources to pull up. But now we can investigate that and see what we can find.
Well, I fully agree with Brandon that we should be paying for the effort that we put in as far as the building of department. But I also feel I don't want to start pricing folks out of town. Those folks that live here that need to do remodels and repairs, and that kind of point of where the decision is to put in a new shower or not, just because it's another $200, that touches some folks in town that I think are going to be more. Whereas if you're going to sell your property for $500,000 and build a $500,000 house, which is really close to the average,
Well, that's a great
that's awkward.
brain. I'll see what I can find.
And just as a note, I've gone down to the attachment B, the land use stuff. I heard recently that Manzanita has decided to load up their short-term rental permits to cover a lot of stuff. They're jacking that up
Now, ours is
big
only
time.
$75.
Yeah.
Quite a few jurisdictions are raising short-term rentals right now.
Yep.
Seaside.
Yeah, there's quite a
Yeah.
few that are doing that.
Seaside.
We might want to look at that one. I can't say anything to the others because I don't know that one I just heard recently, so. No, I am all for working with the e-permitting. I think that's a great idea.
Any other thoughts or questions, and if you need to?
We all good? We can move on?
Before we move on, Jeff had a schedule that had you taking this up on March 3rd. Are you comfortable turning this into whatever document it needs to be, recognizing we'll probably get a lot of input at that point? My concern is if we go to the March workshop, it goes to April, and then kind of up against the deadline. So if you're okay with what you're seeing and understand it, are you okay with us saying we'll put this on, advertise, everything?
I think it's time for public input. Yeah.
No, exactly, that's what we would do, to make it a public hearing. At the end of the day, you may make some changes, approve it, or you may say, let's move it to another meeting.
Right.
But if we get it started, we're going to be in better position. So is that acceptable?
It is, to me.
Thank you.
So can I touch on the next few documents for quick?
Yep.
I put under attachment, you got a minute? Yeah. good. I just wanted to, it's 8 o'clock.
Keep going, Jeff, it's not midnight yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to touch on the fact that we've also put information on technology fee in there, which new communities do is to put a 1% kind of thing for cover the cost of updating of the technology. I gave you the letter. The Cannon Beach fee ordinance is simply just what we've talked about and put it into the schedule so that you adopt that. And then that international building fee validation data, that's exactly what I was talking about, which will be electronic and will be part of the permitting. Then the building services update. Okay, so I changed the language that you had wanted in the contract there with Manzanita, they've agreed to that. I don't have the final signed document. yet.
We're on a new agenda item then, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Good catch there, Brandon.
Not that I'm opposed to moving on, but,
It's all running together.
okay.
I have a question on that building services update, the background and then the analysis information. You have, the building official has worked just 15 hours per week for the past 6 months in Manzanita. And then the next graph, under analysis information, it says the building official has averaged 15 hours a week in Astoria over those past five months while serving an average of 10 hours per week in Manzanita. So I don't know if it's 15,
They're wanting him to go to 10.
they want him to go to 10.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
And so he is, the old contract had him for 15, we've updated to 10. Of course, they're going to cover the travel, like the travel. I've spoken with Astoria. We're going to I approached it as kind of a two-tier model, but they said, no, I prefer, let's just up it to $90, one fee. And yes, we will promise you guys can have him for whatever, if we need out the 15, that we
I'm definitely in support of us maintaining that position. I'm very biased in my opinion, but that is my opinion. I do have a question about his salary structure. How is it structured that he's compensated? Is it just a base wage?
Yeah, it's something that I really think, at least for the last 2 months, I know he's been working more than, his 40 hours. Yeah, it's salary, so we're not giving overtime or anything like that.
We are recognizing as a result of our decision to potentially contract him out, trying to think of something, not just what we need, because we're working in more than 40 hours because of contracts that we have. Try to think of some way to make that right. Don't have the answer yet.
And that's what I'm getting at,
Yes,
is that,
yes.
this isn't because he's having to work here. He's being asked to do quite a bit, and I just would like to know that he's being justly compensated.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right?
Isn't, I'm just following up on this, in the budget, his amount is within the building department. So once we've garnished some more from the fees, we'll have some fluidity to work with his pay, you might say.
Well, yeah, but in the meantime,
In the
he's being
meantime,
asked
yeah.
to, and has been for quite some time.
Yeah. Okay.
He's supposed to be, he and I know he and Jeff have been talking, there are things we can do like increasing the staff on a temporary basis.
Okay,
But thank you.
Okay, our next item,
break?
Brandon, sorry.
Can we
Where are you
take a
going,
quick
Jeff?
break?
Oh, quick break,
Can we go with you?
Just need to use the facility.
facility break.
Oh, okay.
The agenda that was printed has the project financing discussion next. On our gizmos, it's after, so you gotta go find it. So the next item is project financing discussion.
Is that the one that utility work effort rates? Okay, good, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yes. We have been talking about the fact that there are some big ticket items that we've got coming up, and there are a lot of options in ways to be able to fund those. And so one thing that I've been asking is, for example, with the resiliency of the water supply system, should the city move forward with appropriate steps to add a significant level of resiliency in the city's water supply system? For you folks to all nod your head, that's very important, because then it kicks in steps like, further investigation, funding, that sort of thing. And then we also have City Hall Police Station Vetting Committee doing some work. What we need to get some decisions, and then I think that there are enough options that are out there that it would be, that my recommendation would be that you appoint a committee to be able to go ahead and study those options and come back and report to the council saying, we think that this would be a good mix. Again, I think that this particular committee would be a financing committee for that to occur. I think that we've got a lot of good tools. If you recall, we just approved the loans, or the loan for the water meter modules, and the terms on that were, my thought was outrageous. $624,000 loan to us, $322,000 principal forgiveness. So we are paying $302,000 back for $624,000 loan over 20 years at 1%. So what the decision that I've made is that I told you we had applied for some water line work through the same folks that gave us that particular deal. And it was for like $2 million. I want you to know that what we're going to do is, and this is due March 8th, we're going to apply for like $15 million. And the reason is we want to tie down the terms. We can always walk away from it. But my concern is if we do it incrementally, then maybe after 2 years, we do pretty good, and they say, well, we're not going to do this program anymore. So we don't have to take it. And also, if we were to borrow the money, we don't start paying it back until we actually, take the draws. So if we're not going to do any work, and if it happens to be water supply resiliency, if we don't do anything but design for a couple of years, then we're not going to have to do that much to the rates, especially if we're able to get that kind of a thing where maybe we get 52%, principal forgiveness. And the principal forgiveness is tied to our rates. And so if our rates are, they're looking and they say, well, in order to pay this back, it's going to be significant, we might even get a better situation. So the idea is to try, they might turn us down on it, but to start that process to get the best deal that we can. We're also doing some loans for wastewater. We're doing better in wastewater. With the amount that we had for projects was not as high as it was for water. So I think that the DEQ is at 3%, and they've got some other terms that can help us. But the idea is to go for those. Now, at some point, we have to have some decisions made on how we're going to pay that back. And it may be rates, it may be, taxes, it might be food and beverage tax, I don't know, or sales tax, I don't know. But I think it would be good for somebody to be looking at that now and say, this is how the mix that we can deal. I was reluctant to not make the application until we had that answer. So anyway, so that's where we are. I think you could be provided this information, by staff and our financial advisor. But I think for a lot of good reasons, and something that Robin keeps talking about, and I know that y'all do too, is that because there's such an impact, and we're talking about buying a lot of things, and we're doing it because we've identified the needs for those for the benefit of the citizens, that it probably is good to have somebody outside of staff and council advising on that to get more input instead of just from us. So that's my thought on making the recommendation. You don't have to do that. Like I said, staff and the financial advisor can bring you back stuff. We can also work with a financing committee. But we are moving forward on the utility side, and we're going to be talking about utility rates pretty soon. And so I think that we're going to need to raise rates some from an operational standpoint. We're also we will anticipate that some of the work that we're talking about for the water resiliency will start in design, and so we will set the rates up to be able to go ahead and recover that from the debt service. But again, there's an awful lot of moving parts with it, and time, in my opinion, taking time on projects like this, it might be $500,000, $1 million a year in engineering costs and construction costs and those kind of things. So my thought is the best and most efficient way is to try to get as much work done as we can. And then, again, to do it so that it's going to be paid for by people over the next 30 or 40 years. A project like the water resiliency, we had 20 years for the meter modules, but that's because they don't last as long as a pipe in a tank. So there's actually the possibility that we would be able to finance some of those things like over 40 years at the 1% that we were talking about. So that's the strategy so far, is saying, okay, let's go ahead and try to find out what we can get in terms of loans. Don't have to take them. But to try to go ahead and nail down the best terms. And again, there's a lot of things in, I think, a deliberative process to go ahead and determine the best way to go, I think, would be best for the city.
In applying for the loans, do you identify specific projects that would add up to that total amount?
Yes. Yeah, well, so, and they're very flexible. I mean, they're great to work with, because we applied, if you remember, we were talking about coming from Sunset out to Hemlock down through the presidentials and redo the presidentials. We don't have any real problems there, but it's just older, we know, and so it's like, well, let's start, trying to stay ahead on replacing some of the lines. Well, they told us, you can replace it as long as you're doing water projects. And so we'll probably have a call tomorrow with those folks, talking specifically about, okay, well, we got, and we have some tentative numbers, and we told you that there would be a report by March 1st, but we have some tentative numbers. It looks to be about $15 million or something to do what we need to do for the water supply resiliency. And that is, it's actually less than what I thought it would be, but we will we'll withdraw the projects that we had, which is the one presidentials and all that, and then we will put in water line projects and a water tank project. And they will be, discrete from here to here, from here to here, that kind of thing. And then that's what we will try to get evaluated. And I think I mentioned it, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, the more that you have, the more obvious increase you're going to have associated with the rates in order to do that, the more they can deal with you as far as principal forgiveness.
Can you purchase watershed with those funds?
I don't know. At this point, we were talking about, obviously the water line projects, but I will ask that question.
And are all of these projects that you're mentioning, they were all listed in the Water Master Plan, correct?
They were, I don't know if they were all listed. A lot of them were, but at the end of the Water Master Plan process, we had to do a SHRAMP study. And I forgot what SHRAMP stands for, but it has to do with the water supply resiliency. And so those items were looked at, under a different lens. And what we found is that, a lot of lines are not the flexible type. The water tank was put in place before there was any consideration for seismic issues. And, it's kind of like nothing matters if we don't get water down to the bottom of the hill. So that's where that project list came from.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Okay.
asking for a,
Well, I'm asking for consideration, well, I'm letting you know that we're going to have to deal with this in the budget with the rates. It depends, a lot depends on how much, comes back and the answers that we get. But we have a tentative approval. It's a crazy process. It takes like a year. You write a letter and say, can we apply? And then they say, you can apply. And so we've gotten that. So now we're able to go ahead and apply. So it'll take some time.
So you're,
Go ahead.
so you're asking, you say you'll probably ask for an increase in water rates in the next budget. But what will those water rate increases be based on? Will it be based on the potential for the resiliency program, or is it you said operational, so?
No, well, the rate increases potentially are going to be for both. If you remember, we had the model that showed that if we want to, and this is a policy decision, if we want to continue to do the valve replacements and the things that we're doing, the line replacements, then we anticipate that would be a 4.5% increase a year. So that's one part. And then there's the other part, which is, because at this point, we're not talking much about pay-as-you-go. So it's kind of like this is too big of a bite to take without having to spread the cost out. So the initial part of it would be for design fees. And so design fees are not as big as when you hit the construction point. So we would have, once we took the draw for the design, we would have to start paying that part of it back. And so we would have to build into the rates the ability to pay that. Ultimately, we're going to start seeing some spikes as a result of construction projects, if it goes as we're thinking. And then we would, get more involved with those kind of things. But, so I want you to know that as far as from a staff standpoint, what our thought process is, but also that at some point, there's, because of all the options that are there, it might be good to have somebody look at it, but it's not a requirement. We can bring you the information if you want to make the decisions.
Well, I'm in favor of having another set of eyes look at the various financing options we
Yes.
have. Obviously, we have the expertise of our advisors. We know our budget limitations. We're going to have a better handle on what our actual capital outlays are going to be with some semblance of a schedule over 5 to 10 years. But I'm not, having that extra set of eyes, I'm not sure who that is and how we find them.
I'm not,
There might be a couple on the budget
yeah.
and a couple on that vetting committee that have the expertise, but I haven't seen their resumes.
Right, right. And you would have to decide what it is you were looking for out of it. But a lot of, these are really big policy decisions that are coming in front of you. Should you do the projects? How should you pay for them? Those kind of things. So I think getting the input and the help is good.
I really like the idea of taking the 5 citizens off the budget committee and just having them do it. But,
I remember out of the corner of my eye, one of those people had a funny reaction in the back seat. No, talking about Barb, you're on it, right?
no?
No? Okay, no, I'm sorry, so it was Carolyn, yes, and she's not here, so we can say that.
But she told me to make
Yeah.
I just thought that would be really helpful for them to understand.
Sure.
And get the process going, and it makes it pretty easy, but we'd have to ask them.
Yeah. But that's the kind of expertise I think that you want.
And maybe a banker locally,
What's that?
maybe someone who's involved with banking.
Oh,
Yeah.
banking, yeah.
Mhm.
That might be a good idea.
I suspect there may be some retirees in this community who have some real expertise
Yeah,
in large capital projects.
yeah,
Who they are.
yeah.
May know.
Also, it might be interesting because I think we have some tools that they never had, like this loan process and some other things. But, yeah, but it's, I think you definitely, the talent is definitely here to help you.
Okay?
Okay, so this is one you don't have to answer tonight, but are we leaning towards that or not? I think if you give me some direction at some point, we can try pulling that together. I don't know if we have enough yet for them to sit down and analyze, because I think that this loan program will be really important with it.
Yeah, I think at least I'm leaning that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you said that this may take a year, we have to wait a year to find out whether we wanted to form the committee, or?
No, I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm saying that we should have a better handle on what they will let us apply for example.
Okay,
It's that kind of thing.
okay.
So I don't think we need to wait a year. No.
Well, then I'm leaning towards,
But it might take us it might take a year for them to give us the definitive answer, but we should look at it.
Okay. Moving on then. Next item is funding for the Cannon Beach Elementary School property.
Yes, I think, hopefully we have some good news with this, as we talked about earlier. One of the sticking points in trying to work through the contract negotiations is, a while back, we didn't know how we were going to pay for it. And so there were a lot of contingencies put in for, what if we don't get the funds from the TLT until July, and so we wouldn't be able to pay until we got those funds. We made a plea to the county, and they said, okay, we'll give you a second draw, and that put us in an entirely different situation, so we don't have to wait the whole time. But if we don't have all those contingencies, we can complete the deal more quickly. So right now, we have $299,000 and 700. That is, let me see, a little bit over $100,000 away from the $400,000. I don't recall exactly what we decided in the contract as far as closing fees, who pays what, but I would think that it's probably going to be a little bit more than the $100,000. So there's a couple options for you, and hopefully it's going to be easy enough that you can give us some direction, that we can bring it to you March 3rd. First is that we know that, I think there's like a $290,000 balance or something in the TAC fund for the TLT funds, and it's the same type of money. And so potentially we could take, if you decide to do it, we could have conversations with TAC, but we could take those funds and say, okay, we've got the money to buy this, and then we would be ready to go. That's one option. And another is that we could take the same amount from the general fund and then do that as a loan and pay that back. We could also do it as a loan for the TLT funds from TAC, but in either case, I would ask that we spread that maybe over 2 or 3 years. We had an earlier discussion about cash flow, and so if we borrow $100,000 and then we have to repay it in July 100% from either one of those funds, if we go that way, then that means where we would have had $400,000, now we have $300,000 to do what we need to do next. And that won't even start getting, we won't get that until January, and then again in July. So if we have some funds left with whatever's going to be coming in July, then the less that we have to pay back, the more that we have to be able to take the next step. So I guess what I'm asking is, if we want to move forward with that, and this helps us to get to where we want to be on owning the property, we're short. That money potentially will come in July. If we want to wait, then we'll still have to, we've got a couple iterations, I would say, on the contract. If we're ready to go ahead and make that change and get the ownership, then I really think those are the two. I mean, we could probably go to a bank and try to borrow the money, but I think we would do better, and especially since we have the TLT funds, which would be my preference, to be able to take it from there.
Well, especially if we could return and refund paid off over a 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah.
It would be somewhat painless. You just have to make sure there aren't other demands on those funds, and right now we don't owe any other demands.
Another option that I thought was the original option would be to pay them a portion now and a portion in July.
But we won't own it until we pay that.
I know.
Portion.
I would much rather do it.
Yeah.
And I think if we did look into some local loans, we could probably find a good one. But the fact that we have the TRT money and we can do it, I don't mind doing that. So, but I am kind of concerned because there's been a little brouhaha lately about the communications with, my understanding was that we had already paid an earnest of some kind. I guess we didn't. I was going on the confidence that we had this locked in with that sort of payment. We don't. I think we should at least give them something right away.
I think that the recent communication, we've been solid with Sheila Rowley all along. This is where we were headed. There was no discussion about any other purchasers, anything like that. And then there was a change. And then some folks started talking before that individual got to me. Sheila never mentioned there was a change. But once I had the conversation, they understood. I told them we were going to be talking tonight about making that change. But there was no discussion or notification that they had made a change in the team on their side. Once we do it, we made the contact, and I think the understanding that we've worked through it. That was with the conversation I had with Brian.
That was a conversation I had with him 3 days ago. I guess it's changed since then. So,
He's not letting me know.
And I had one with him today.
okay, what would you,
And we need to have a signed contract, we need to do the earnest money and get things rolling immediately.
Okay, well then we either need the funds,
yeah, and I'm comfortable with taking it out of TRT.
and I'll be calling because that's not our conversation, so.
I know, it wasn't my conversation either, but we're working with a different person.
Yes,
And,
Yeah, but, and again, I had talked to him and this was settled, so.
there are other people in the wings. We need to act immediately.
Okay,
So where are we with the contract?
the contract has been going back and forth because we originally said, in good faith, to put down $50,000. And then when their contract came back, it was that money was at risk. If certain steps weren't approved by a certain time, they got to keep the funds. So we wrote another contract that proposed that if it was going to be at risk, we would do it with a smaller amount of money. We just got that contract proposal back on Monday, or last Monday. Yeah, it was last Monday. And we said, and actually I've already had conversations with, as of Thursday of last week, with Barry Elsner about changing it, or at least responding to that. But then this issue came up about us receiving the money. This happened on January 31st was the transfer. And that's when I said I could come to you and talk about getting, actually just going ahead and being ready to buy it.
I think that's what we should do.
Okay, then we can,
Community expects that.
I understand, and we've been working towards that, and there's been steps that we've taken to make that happen. But if, what I need to know is which option do you prefer so that we can write a resolution or ordinance or whatever. I don't know how many steps it'll take to,
Which is most available?
I'm just thinking that if you're using, when you said, are you talking about the Tourism and Arts
yes,
Commission Fund? Because that's really nailed down in its ordinance, so you probably just have to change that ordinance on how that money is used.
Yeah.
Because you don't mean just to define
Yeah.
it, so that would need an ordinance
yeah.
change.
Well, and I think also if you took money from the reserve, the general fund reserve, we'd probably have the same steps to have to do an ordinance. So that's what it would take. I don't know if we could do the two readings at one time. Moving money is different than a lot of other things that we do, but we would just get the process started.
Could we propose to the school district that they will pay them the $299 as soon as we, sign, and then the follow-up will be after we can get the ordinances for the rest. So it will happen, it will lock it in really quick, and then we'll have the ordinances by next month, because it's going to take us a month to, get ordinances written up and approved.
Yes, we can do that, and as a matter of fact, if you authorize payment of $15,000, I think it was $12,000, then just with the existing contract, we can go ahead and,
50,000, isn't
Pardon?
that what it's supposed to be?
right, the contract written now is $12,000. Because that was the
We
whole,
don't have a signed contract.
that is the negotiation that we've done, and it's based on $12,000, and it was changed, and they've agreed to the $12,000. We don't have a signed contract. We've been working through it. I've had no notice whatsoever that there's any timing issues on it.
I understand that, and I'm not worried about how it got here and why it got here. I just want to move ahead to make sure that we're doing. If you want to pay the $12,000 right now, that's fine. If that locks us in, I'm more than comfortable paying the $299 because we got it. Why not?
And that was what it
So-
was for.
But if if it means rewriting the contract in order to say $299,
It's an easy thing, do an addendum.
It's an easy thing
It's
until they
not
show it to their
hard.
lawyers.
yeah,
It's
that,
not hard.
I would not recommend that when they're saying our deposit is at risk, that we should put $299,000.
okay. Well, let's do the 12th then, and let's get that done within the week or something.
I don't think that's going to work.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
But if that's in the
Okay,
contract, though,
that's their,
That's their proposal.
That's their
Well, we have
proposal.
to,
That's what they have proposed to us.
the 12,000 is in the contract, so we have to pay that in order to sign the contract.
Doesn't mean we couldn't pay next week, we could pay the 299 minus 12,000.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just keep making payments all along, but we need to move ahead.
But I think everybody understands that we need to have something signed by next week. That's my sense of it. And if we need to start working on however we're going to get the rest of the money with an ordinance, let's do that as soon as that works.
Well, I think we should take it out of the reserve fund. The committee, the TAF committee originally wanted to use some of that money to go toward the purchase of the elementary schools, so we're just helping them
Well,
along.
the commission agrees, but it's just the ordinance would have to be.
Right,
changed to
exactly.
Right.
But he was
And if
asking
it was
which
an
direction
emergency,
we should go.
then you can do it in less than 30 days if you had an emergency clause. And we've
Yeah,
done
no, I don't think that it's an emergency, because if we give them the 12 and then we sign the contract, and then we give them the dates. But the contract that they sent back gave us until like July of 2021 to purchase. So I don't think that we're,
But they could easily go and write up a new contract with somebody else
Yeah, you just
next week.
pull it. If it's not signed, it's done.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to see that contract.
So would I.
Yeah, well,
I'll forward to you.
okay. Next item, please.
So if we're going to do a marathon loan, you have the option of charging interest.
On ourselves.
You can have a zero interest rate if you want, so I don't know what your pleasure is, or if you want it to be a zero interest loan. We just need to get that into a resolution
Right.
for the marathon loan.
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, I guess zero fund makes sense to me, just because,
Especially since it's going to be a short-term loan.
Okay. Needed that information, that's all.
okay. Now we'll move on to city vehicle discussion.
Yeah, there's currently $25,000 for a new vehicle in the building department budget. And I'd said to you, we will try to buy a used vehicle for that price. And we found is that vehicles in the $25,000 to $30,000 range have between 44,000 and 80,000 miles. We can buy a new vehicle if there's an additional $10,000, which would have a 100,000 mile warranty, and the pricing is about $16,000 off of what you would pay for the vehicle at the dealership, because we're getting it on state contract. The issue is that it takes 4 to 6 months to get a vehicle, because you don't buy them off the lot. They've got to make it, it's got to get in line, all that stuff. And so what I would like is your authorization to move forward with purchasing the new vehicle. We would find the $10,000. We've got a couple of vehicles we'll probably end up selling that would be able to offset that, and but just want to be able to move forward.
You do that in this current budget.
I do it in this year. You've got $25,000 in the budget. We have vehicles that will be sold as other vehicles come in, and so that should make up the $10,000.
I'm in support of it.
Pardon?
I'm in support of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, pretty good? Okay, we're good with that.
All right, thanks. Is that it?
That ends the agenda. We'll go to the order. And I believe Robin has some.
Well, we have a couple things. One is that Colleen and I went to the League of Oregon Cities, and we had two different people there. One was DEQ, and they did talk about loans, and I do have a paper if we want to have that to look at what kind of loans they do. And we said, yep, we know all about it. So that was kind of fun. And then the other big item was the census. And because we don't have location addresses with post office boxes, we had to put our heads together and try and figure out how we could reach out to people, because one of my big concerns is that in March, they're going to census. In April, if you don't respond, then they're going to start going door to door. And I think if we can make it really easy on our citizens, it'd be nice. They said you can do it online, and Colleen, there were a couple ideas. I think one was maybe a library and one was here about putting something up for people to register.
Those were some ideas that were talked about, and it sounded pretty useful, that if we had, if a city had, a computer that people could, or more than one, but anyway, set up, that maybe just only had the link to the census. If someone wanted to come in and actually go online to do their census, then that would be one place they could do it. The library, a lot of people use the internet at the library, so they'd already be able to do that.
Nancy, maybe know that.
Well, the library does charge 10 cents a minute,
Well,
so I don't,
well,
you know,
still,
that's.
I mean, 10 cents a
think
minute,
about.
but still, it's an opportunity. And the fact that people won't be getting anything at their door, they'll only be, because we get post office boxes, like most of the towns along the coast, they realize, the census group realizes it's a big problem. And there's a group called We Count Oregon, and it's got a lot of useful information. We could put a link on our webpage that people could just look at, and it gives them all kinds of information about, where to go, the internet, et cetera, and I think that would be one thing we could do to, and on our Facebook, have a link so that people can get more information. There's a group, a committee that's already been formed for Clatsop County, and I know that Carmen Swigert's on that committee, and they're working on outreach to everyone, trying to get the people that are very difficult to count, like children under 5, people that don't speak English very well, seniors, people, minorities, just people that just haven't been counted. And it's pretty critical to all the cities and states and counties as to why you want to count all your people, because, that's how they distribute the representatives, and that's how they distribute funds for housing and things like that. So getting the message out is real important, and so I know that there's a committee working on that. But there's things the city can do too. And I think
Utility bills was one of the things.
Yeah, I think that, it's good to have a committee trying to get all of the people who might not normally do a census, but even people who are somewhat informed, how are they going to learn about it?
Well, they can read about it in the paper for one thing. I mean, it is really being pushed, and we can push it as well.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really great if we pushed it as well, because it certainly help our citizens, and that's what we're all about. But, so, the muni memo can go out. So anybody that might look in the paper, people that might look at our webpage, people that might look on our Facebook, but maybe put notices out in the post offices, because, everybody goes there to get their mail, and then they would learn right there that, hey, I'm not going to get anything in my mail. I need to do it some other way. You can do it by phone. You can do it by, well, certainly mail, but they won't have it, and by internet. So there's different options.
Yeah. And we could set something, to your point, we could set something up here with a dedicated, you just get right onto the site.
I think the water bill, though, I think is the
Yeah,
best solution.
yeah, and we just have to explain it so that people understand that you're not going to get something from anybody else.
Yeah, I really like the idea of a dedicated computer here that's in a neutral location, and people can come, and then we can focus on letting people know that we have that available to them. So yeah, I think that's an excellent idea.
And our next meeting with the League of Oregon Cities is November 6th. We're hosting it then.
Oh.
Sorry. In May, it will be in Seaside, and in May 1st and August 7th, it's in Warrenton. And then I have one question about, and I'm sorry Jeff isn't here, but I was hoping that Jeff could bring to us at our next city council meeting an answer about the difference between garages and what happened with Brandon and his garage and what also happened with Susie Simon. It was a planning commission decision. She owned 2 lots, and she had a son with the ALS. And she promised that if she sold the house and the lot, they would go together as one of the agreements to her being able to do that. So I just would like a little more discussion, because I don't think the analogy is similar.
Okay, yes, we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? 1, 2, okay. We are adjourned. Thank you.